Welcome back. It wasn't a total eclipse here on the Suncoast, but it sure was fun here at ABC7 World Headquarters. We all went outside and took turns wearing those protective glasses to get a peek at the partial eclipse. Daylight dimmed, exotic crescent patterns peeked through the foliage. Of course, along the path across the country where the eclipse was total, it was a cosmic spectacle not seen in the U.S. since 1979 and not seen again until the year 2024. Joining us for more is Alan Fenderson, an instructor at the Department of Natural Sciences at State College of Florida, and ABC7 Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Alan, this was really, even though we did not see the total eclipse here, was really an event that kind of tied all of us together to all go outside and look at it. Basically explain to us what happened today, knowing that it was not a total eclipse, unlike other parts of the country.
Well, one big thing is that if you take a look at the total eclipse from Oregon all the way to South Carolina, the entire country, it took about 90 minutes. But we saw the moon cross, not totally, the sun, about 3 hours. We got to see it. So it's a big difference between when and how long the sun is blocked out, whether it's partial or
Why does it happen so rarely in terms of it being visible or this phenomenon happening in viewing of North America?
Well, two things. One thing is that the orbit of the moon around the Earth is elliptical, slightly, not a lot. But the moon changes distance between the Earth and the moon by 30,000 miles. So the moon could be, for instance, at 280 and 250. And if it's at 280, you won't get a total eclipse. You get an annular eclipse in which the sun is not completely blocked out. Still got a ring around the moon.
But Bob, how does the atmospheric conditions affect what you see out there?
Well, I'll tell you, it was kind of interesting to see. That's what I took back from it, not the fact that we didn't have a total eclipse here, but a partial eclipse. But it was interesting to see the sky and the different shades. You're not going to see that ever until you get some sort of eclipse taking place, and it was just a very eerie, kind of interesting view. Not even looking at the sun and the moon's, in between there, but just seeing the different shades that we were getting was really fascinating to me. And as he said, the perigee and apogee of the moon's closeness, or the fact how far away from the Earth it is, makes a difference on the total or the annular eclipses. And although we don't get it here all the time in the United States, it happens, once every couple of years across the globe, for that matter. And I know I spoke earlier and said that nearly 500 million people had the opportunity to, at least, to experience this eclipse. 500 million people go, well, there's only 330 in the United States. Where are these? Well, Canada had the opportunity, as well as Mexico. It was only 65% coverage there, but if you include all that population that had the chance, it was up to 500 million. So.
And people were even out in cruise ships.
Yeah, cruise ships too. You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we are just getting warmed up. We'll have much more on the total eclipse in a moment, right after we check First Alert Weather. Welcome back. We only had a partial look at the total eclipse of the sun seen across the United States today, but to use a scientific term, it was really cool. Joining us for more is Alan Fenderson, an instructor in the Department of Natural Sciences at State College of Florida, and the ABC7 Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan. Alan, according to the New York Times, scientists are hoping their studies of the eclipse will lead to important discoveries about the mysterious corona of the sun. What is mysterious, and what are scientists looking to find out?
It is a mysterious part of the sun because the sun surface temperature is about 5,000 degrees Celsius. And the wispy corona around it, up maybe 2,000 miles, it's 1,000,000 degrees. And heat only goes one way. It goes from hot things to cold things, or cooler things. So it couldn't be thermal conduction from the Earth's surface, from the sun surface to the corona, because you're going from a cold thing to a hot thing. It goes the other way around. So something else non-thermal, it's causing all the temperature increase.
What is the most popular theory?
Magnetic fields. And also these tiny little explosions that occur on the parameters of the chromosphere.
Why does observing an eclipse lead scientists to believe that they're going to learn something significant about this? Well,
You can only see the inner and middle corona when you use when it is an eclipse. When you want to see the outer part, you don't need an eclipse. You can use what's called a chronograph, and that's just a telescope with a disc in the middle of it, and that blocks out the sun. But you have to have a big disc, because if you don't, you're going to get stuff coming in from the sun, and you won't see the outer.
So scientific experts basically went around the country today to the areas where it was a total eclipse. But, you know, the weather sometimes gets in the way. And as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, our news director told us that a lot of her friends in Las Vegas, which is always sunny.
Right.
On the one day it needed it to be sunny, wasn't.
Wasn't. Yeah, well, get this. My aunt, who lives in Omaha, Nebraska, had a big plan, you know, and they went just south of Omaha where it was a total eclipse, and my cousin came from Ohio. Some other people were flying in. They were all going to meet there, then drive down 30 miles or so, and it turned out it was pretty much cloudy. I went and reviewed the satellite imagery. It was pretty much cloudy throughout the event, but we'll see how that plays out. Interesting to note what he's talking about is the corona, or the sun. The study of the sun, I think, is crucial to find out more about the climate. And NASA, if you don't know it, their 2016, the new satellite, by the way, GO-16, right, is now in use, and it has a special device on that satellite that is looking not just at Earth, but also at the sun to get more valuable research data on the sun, because it plays such an important role in our day-to-day lives here.
Well, the sun provides light and it provides heat, but how else does the sun affect our weather? And do events like this affect our weather in any way?
Well, the weather is interesting. I was at someone's house watching the eclipse, and I know some of the folks out there were doing the same. And it makes sense. You know, you're blocking out nearly 80% of the sun and the sun's rays. It's going to feel a little bit cooler, and certainly it did. I was out there outdoors, and it was a noticeable drop. So the gentleman in this house I was at, which is Ed Goff, who provides us with some camera shots at times in Anna Maria, as well as temperatures. I go, could you go check your temperature gauge? And sure enough, he did. He did a check. He has a valid, you know, weather station there at his home, and it showed a 2 to 3 degree drop in temperature in 2 hours that he was watching it. So he's going to send me the chart. It'd be interesting to see that slight fall. I mean, it's not a big deal, but and sure, it happened more so. I think the temperature probably dropped more so where the total eclipse was occurring.
Exactly.
And not only the temperature drop, but you know, animals don't know what to do. And Alan, what happens in these areas where there is a total eclipse? The animals that are nocturnal and only come out at night, what happens?
I'm not sure about the animals at night, but I do know that people are studying them all over the country during the eclipse. The zoos are observing the animals and see what happens before, during, and then after the eclipse. And
I'm sure it makes sense. Obviously, if the animals are out there and they're dependent upon a certain time for the night to fall, they have no idea what an eclipse is, and it gets dark, and I'm sure then what's going on here? I better seek shelter or go out and look for food, or whatever they are, nocturnal or whatever they may be. Interesting to note, if you don't know a lot about eclipses, and I'm sure you'll back me up on this, is that they were studying them thousands of years BC, and interested in them, not surely knowing what they were about, but kind of the Chinese, I believe, were the biggest in that, if I'm not mistaken, the Chinese astronomers.
Actually, in 500 BC, there was a war going on, and I forget who were warring at that time. Most everybody was warring at the time. But they were warring at that time. They were beating each other up, and then the eclipse happened. And they put down their weapons and went home.
Something was going on.
Yeah, they figured it was a bad omen. Yeah. So I better go back.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
But scientists in the scientific community, because we mentioned solar eclipses do happen fairly frequently. You know, not like just you know every 25 years across North America. And some people I heard today that they went to Libya a couple of years ago to be in the desert there. So how often do scientists, whenever this happens, do they just flock to where the path of the eclipse is?
Usually, yeah. You see a lot of scientists, professional scientists, also graduate students in astronomy. They'll follow it.
So we saw, again, at the beginning of our broadcast, local schools brought their kids out there to the parking lots and tried to show them to observe the eclipse safely. But when you are talking to students about this, what are you trying to teach them?
Well, mainly in the class, I'm trying to teach them what's actually going on with an eclipse. Why isn't it so frequent? Why isn't every month? I mean, the moon goes around the Earth every 30 days. So we should see one every month, you would think. But the orbit of the moon is tilted 5 degrees. So the only time that you get a lineup is 2 times a year, okay? And those are called nodes. You get a solar eclipse on those 2 times when the tip is perpendicular to the radius from the Earth to the sun.
Bob, you're holding a book there. Is there a lot of good books about there, basically explaining what this is about and how it works?
Yeah, Chap Percival wrote this.
Yes.
He's a
Local guy.
Local guy, yeah. And there's a lot of great information. Obviously now with the internet, you can go all over the place and research data. And as you pointed out, there's a lot to do with math when it comes to predicting these, eclipses, obviously, and lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, math. I think it's a great learning in letting the kids know how far the moon is from the Earth and how far the sun is from the Earth. 93 million miles up there, the sun kind of sitting there, and we're kind of rotating around it.
Right, and I talked to Chap yesterday because I invited him on to this broadcast, but he was out in the middle of Tennessee or Kentucky, and in an area which we found out tonight does not have a lot of connectivity.
Oh yeah. Which
is made doing Skypes quite difficult. But I would imagine to folks in the astronomy community, this is like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it is, and he's gone all over. He went to, you said, he's going to go to probably Argentina as well, and in the future, and yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I'm going to Argentina.
Are you really?
Yeah. I missed this one.
Okay.
I might go to the next one.
Well, then we'll pick up on that in a moment. We will have a quick break, and we'll return for final thoughts right after this. We're talking about today's total eclipse of the sun, and our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. Alan, what are the other things that scientists out there are trying to glean from total eclipses like the one we saw today?
There are scientists that are looking at the corona, mentioned that. Also, NASA has some sensing of the ionosphere. The ionosphere is a layer of ions that's high up in the sky, and those ions are produced by ultraviolet light from the sun. That's actually ionizing these air atoms. And the ionization layer actually causes radio and television beams to bounce off of those layers, and that causes interference.
I'm going to throw you, Bob, a little bit of a curveball here, because I am wondering if events like today that kind of capture the imagination of the general public and not just the scientific community results in maybe more kids wanting to go into the sciences, or people becoming more interested about the weather and science than otherwise might happen.
Well, whenever you look up in the sky and you get people to do that more and more, you start to see things, and it opens up your mind a little bit more to the science of the atmosphere and the weather. It's becoming really a really big deal. People don't know it, but space weather has been going up in terms of the knowledge that we're gaining and the fact that we're learning more about space weather. So there's a lot more to be learned, and that's what is kind of interesting, is that we are starting to learn more about the weather in space and how it has an impact on us down here, and we can kind of relate that. I think it's just a fascinating thing. I remember when I was a kid, I think I was 10, 11 years old, and there was a partial eclipse up in Ohio, and I went to the library there, and we checked it out, and I was just amazed with that. So yes, I think it does.
And I remember that too. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us tonight. But before we go, we want to talk about what we talked about on Friday. The talk of the town was President Trump's tough week. The president spoke about how there were fine people on both sides of the protests in Charlottesville, Virginia, which fueled many members of his own party to criticize him. So how about your reaction? AJ says, I think both sides were wrong. I don't support either. Trump is always saying something ridiculous. Both sides have fine people, question mark, multiple times. Vince adds, the truth hurts. Trump tells the truth, and liberals can't stand it. Okay? And from Ron, Trump brings out the worst in us as a people as he divides us into us versus them country, right or left. This is bad for America. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions. They're on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Alan Fenderson is an instructor at the Department of Natural Sciences at the State College of Florida and ABC 7. Chief meteorologist is here every night. We want to thank you both.